Box. It's time for a podcast.
It's Friday then. It's Saturday, Sunday. What?
You're listening to the Pitwall Girls podcast, hosted by Darlene and Adrian.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Pitwall Girls. I'm Darlene.
And I'm Nako.
And we're just chit-chatting Japan preview this episode.
So much to talk about.
So much to talk about. We have a little agenda and it is a bit chaotic, so bear with us, but we are going to bring all the headlines to you. So I think one that's been circulating for a bit now is that Adrian Newey?
I think Newey, yeah, Adrian Newey.
Has a couple of job offers. It must be nice to be him. He's getting gunned down by Ferrari. He has a great job at Red Bull. And the latest is that Lawrence Stroll has offered him a position within Aston Martin, supposedly offering him more than what drivers make, which, you know, some drivers make like $1 million and others make $100 million if you are Lewis Hamilton next year. But that is super tempting for Adrian.
Yeah, so for those of you who are not familiar, Adrian Newey is kind of the brilliant car designer over at Red Bull. He's been there forever. He has a book called How to Build a Car, which is kind of like half memoir, half kind of his life, and just gets into how he thinks about designing cars. So highly recommend that book. Taught me a lot about like aerodynamics and like how cars are built in F1. But yeah, no, it's a really big deal. You know, he's been kind of sort of been told to be responsible for a lot of the success that Red Bull has had and how quick their car is. You know, obviously Max is a really fast driver, but part of what is working for Red Bull is their extremely fast car that no one seems to be able to replicate or copy. And that's really all Adrian Newey. Not all Adrian Newey, but, you know, he is kind of the main person that's designing the car and, you know, determining the direction. Huge deal if Red Bull loses him. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. And Aston Martin is an interesting one because there's a lot of unknowns with what's going to go down with Aston Martin in the next couple of years. They do have a relationship with Honda. Mm-hmm. So Honda is the one that, you know, has been developing the engine for Red Bull powertrains for a while. And that relationship is closing. And Honda is going to be partnering with Aston Martin moving forward to build their engine. Adrian Newey has a pretty good relationship with Honda, obviously, because he's been designing the Red Bull car for a while with using the Honda engine. So that's probably part of the reason why this conversation's coming up. But yeah, with Honda and Aston Martin. And then there's also other things with Aston Martin around is Saudi Aramco trying to buy out the rest of the Stroll's shares, or the Stroll's even going to be in F1 in the future. That's also kind of up in the air. So yeah, who knows?
So many unknowns. And you know what I was thinking? Some of the drivers that, you know, made moves or signed earlier contracts, like where Adrian goes is a big like he's a big key player. Like I would say he is, you know how sometimes we say like Lewis Hamilton is a driver that everybody wants. It's Adrian. Where he goes, he's going to build a great car, and I feel like Max will follow him if he does leave Red Bull, especially if he goes over to somewhere where there is a Honda engine.
Yeah, except I can't really see Max in a Aston Martin. Like, that would be crazy.
I could see him. I mean, I could see him there if they have a great engine, a great car, and I mean, the money's there, so.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my vision has always been, so Yuki Tsunoda and Ayumu Iwasa, who we can talk about a little bit later. Mm-hmm. They're both Red Bull Junior, like they were both previously Red Bull Junior drivers, but they also have a closer relationship with Honda. They're really like Honda drivers, and Honda put them in those seats in some ways. And so I always thought like, oh, it would be cool to have a double Japanese driver lineup at Aston Martin when Honda is building those engines. So I always was like, that would be cool if that happened, but that's probably not very likely.
Would that be for 2025 or 2026 when the Honda engine would come into play?
I think 2026. We could fact check ourselves later on that, but I believe it's 2026.
Okay, we will check. Well, Speaking of Yuki, it is his home race this weekend, and
Yes.
yeah, it's his home race this weekend, and he's been doing good. I'm hoping he finishes high in the point. There are some changes to the driver lineup for FP1. At VCarb, you want to talk about that?
Yes. So this week, instead of Ricciardo in FP1, Ayumu Iwasa, who is currently in the Japanese Super Formula Series, but last year and the year
Mm-hmm.
previous was in Formula 2, he will be driving FP1. So this is a part of the standard thing that teams do. They're required to let young drivers, take on FP1 for a certain number of races. So this is Ayumu Iwasa's first chance at FP1. He's been in an F1 car one other time for young driver testing last year, but since then has not been in an F1 car. So it's super exciting to have Yuki and Ayumu in Japan. I think all the Japanese fans are super pumped. And I'm really excited because I see a lot of potential in Ayumu. I think last year he finished like fifth or sixth in Formula 2. And he was, around there, like fifth in Formula 2 in his rookie season the year previous. He's done pretty well in other regional formulas. And so, yeah, I always thought that if there was going to be a seat opening up in VCarb at some point, he would have a good shot at it. So it'd be really interesting to see how he does in in FP1. I always think it's interesting though when they're like, oh, these young drivers like in FP1, like they can really prove themselves. How do you prove yourself in
In a free
FP1?
practice, yeah.
Like it's kind of just like, I don't know if they like try to simulate a longer race kind of simulation in Formula in free practice one. Who knows? But yeah, it'll be exciting to see him out there with Yuki. And Ricciardo is not going to be in FP1, which means less practice time for him this week. Yeah, I mean,
Ricciardo has not
drama.
been doing too hot. Yeah, he has not been doing too great. And I was thinking how, he might not do great and just say, like, I didn't have enough time to practice.
He could, yeah. And I don't know, were you the one who was telling me that he might have been given a 2-race ultimatum?
Yeah, so there was a rumor and it seems to have died down by now, and it wasn't by a very reputable source, but supposedly, allegedly, Ricciardo was given a 2-race ultimatum, which, he needed to perform better than Yuki or just perform well enough. If not in Miami, he would be replaced by Liam Lawson.
Ooh, that would be interesting if that happened.
I want to see Liam in like a Formula 1 actually racing.
Yeah. Mid-season changes to the lineup are always really spicy. And, VCarb, previously AlphaTauri, did this last year where they brought Nick DeVries in. Nick DeVries was taken out and replaced by Liam Lawson.
Well,
so
by Daniel,
who
then broke his wrist and had to be
right.
replaced by
Daniel came in mid-season. Right. But, it's not unheard of for them to take out, like, the Nick DeVries type of driver who's not well. Obviously, Daniel Ricciardo is a very different situation than Nick DeVries in that he has, like, very long-standing relationship with the Red Bull team. But, yeah, we'll see what happens. And I think mid-season changes would be interesting also to look out for Williams, potentially. So Logan Sargent has clearly not been doing very, very well. And there have been rumors or mumblings, talks about potentially Kimi Antonelli, who's currently driving in Formula 2, to potentially, have a chance to maybe replace Logan mid-season at Williams. And so Kimi Antonelli, he's 17 years old. He's not able to drive in Formula 1 yet because you have to be 18 in order to drive in Formula 1.
Is this a new rule? Was Max not 17 when he came into the sport?
I don't know, but I keep hearing that he's not 18 yet, so he can't drive in Formula 1.
So it must be Yeah, and Kimi is also who Mercedes is really gunning for. This is probably their top candidate.
He has been in the Mercedes junior team since he was 12, which is
insane wild
to me. Like, since he was 12. And he's in Formula 2 now, but he has enough super license points because he's been in a ton of different Formula 4, Formula 3 regional series, and it's been enough where he's gotten enough super license points in order to drive in F1 as soon as he turns 18. He turns 18 a week before the Italian Grand Prix this year. So there's been a little bit of rumors, mumblings that will, he get dropped into Williams, if Logan continues to not perform around the Italian Grand Prix? He's Italian, it'll be a really
What a
crazy.
nice birthday gift.
Yeah, it would be crazy. But James Vowles, the team principal at Williams, has also been pretty vocal about the fact that it's not a sure thing that Kimi Antonelli is coming into the Williams. He wants to respect the Williams young driver program that they have. And it sounds like James Vowles, since he's taken on that team principal role, has been trying to distance himself a bit from Mercedes and
It
not
does
wanting to be
seem
seen
that way.
like he doesn't want to be the Mercedes junior team. He wants to have a relationship with Mercedes more like Aston Martin or McLaren, where they both also buy Mercedes engines, but they're not ever treated like a junior team.
B team.
Exactly. George Russell was on loan from Mercedes to Williams to be there, really just to get him more experience until he was ready to go to Mercedes, right? And that's not really great for Williams. That means that they can't develop their own drivers. Like, they're just kind of the holding spot for these young Mercedes drivers. They may get nothing out of it. But I think with the Kimi Antonelli situation, especially if it happens mid-season, it'd be a really different thing because, like, what are they going to do anyway? Like, Logan Sargent is not doing well. It's not like it seems like he's going to have a sudden uptick. There are other young drivers that, they might want to cultivate. Like, they're not ready yet for F1. Like, they have 2 and F2 this year, but they're not really up there. They're not really in contention to start in F1 anytime soon. So, like, it would make sense to just slot Kimi in for half the season, see how it goes, and then, then maybe he can go over to Mercedes next year. 2025 will be like a lower pressure year for the driver because, it's kind of a done deal. Like, everyone's waiting for the 2026 regulation change anyway. So I think that would make a lot of sense to get him some experience in the Williams. James Vowles might be a little salty about it, but like, what else are they going to do?
Right. If Logan's not performing and they want him out and there's somebody else that deserves a chance, that seems, this always happens to me. My chair just drops. But I did hear Will Buxton give a great explanation as to why Kimi would not just go to Williams in 2025 and Mercedes would actually sign him, because it is a lower pressure year where he would use the year to become more familiar with the team and how operations go. And then 2026 really become more familiar with the car because there will be new regulations. So that actually makes a lot of sense. And it seems like Mercedes is set on him and not getting Carlos. And I will say, I think the exception to them not signing Kimi for 2025 would be if Vettel comes back to Formula One, which is one of the more, I wouldn't even say it's a rumor, it's just a headline. Vettel did some testing and he said he missed F1 and he feels super capable of returning to the sport. And he said he's been in talks with Toto. He doesn't know if that entails being in talks with Mercedes. And Lewis Hamilton gave his blessing by saying that he thinks that Vettel would be a great fit at Mercedes. This would make me so happy to have a year where I'm actually watching F1 and Vettel's racing.
I mean, it would be pretty wild. So he's doing the testing for Porsche for the Le Mans 24-hour Le Mans car. I don't know if he's confirmed to actually race in Le Mans, but I think he was just testing out the car and he seemed to really enjoy it and miss racing. That, I think, would be a good option for Mercedes for 2025 if they don't feel, Kimi Antonelli is ready yet. And I also am confused because I've always heard his name, Kimi Antonelli. His name is actually Andrea Kimi Antonelli. And now it seems like F1 is calling him Andrea Antonelli. So in case there's any confusion on, it's
I
kind
thought
of the
his
same
name
person.
was Kimi. I heard you say Andrea. I was like, I guess he has more names.
Yeah, it's Andrea Kimi Antonelli. And like, if you look at the Formula 2 rankings, it's Andrea Antonelli. So that's why I've been flip-flopping back and forth. But we can stick with Kimi because that's what everyone's called him before.
We'll have to ask him one day if we're on track, like pit lane reporting. What is your preferred name? Exactly.
Yeah. But anyway, if Mercedes doesn't feel like he's fully ready yet, and they don't even want to try him in the 2025 car, because they don't want to ruin him by putting him in that seat too soon, then Vettel would make sense because it's not going to be a long-term play. Like, I feel like if you put Sainz or someone in a Mercedes, that's a longer-term play. Like, that's someone where you don't want to just take him out all of a sudden when Kimi's ready. they're
Right.
going to want Sainz for a few years. And so Vettel would make sense because it would be like a 1-year contract probably. And it's just enough time to get Kimi a little bit more experience, maybe in Formula 2, before you know, throw him into the Formula 1 seat. So I think that would make sense, and that would solidify Kimi Antonelli as the long-term vision rather than
Mm-hmm.
like them trying to play, you know, Carlos Sainz in Mercedes for a few
Yeah,
years. And then
that's
that puts them in a bad spot because if Carlos Sainz does well in the Mercedes, then what do you do
right.
with Kimi? When do you bring them in? So I feel like going with a shorter-term play would make sense for Mercedes so they don't have to
Yeah.
make that difficult decision later.
I can see Toto falling in love with Carlos as a driver. So he probably doesn't even want to put himself in that predicament. So yeah, I really
No.
don't see Carlos going to Mercedes anymore. But let's go back to Williams. So I just saw that Logan will actually be racing using the repaired chassis of Alex Albon, and Alex will keep Logan's chassis for this race weekend, and they actually won't have a spare chassis until Miami. So there's still the Chinese GP after the Japanese GP. So this puts so much pressure on them. Like, they cannot crash. They cannot be
And the
involved
Chinese
in
Grand
any.
Prix.
Mhm.
Well,
It's
the
a sprint
Chinese Grand Prix is
race.
a sprint race too.
And
So
yeah,
it's like even more opportunity for something bad to happen. And
yeah,
do
so
they do the
much
same thing?
pressure.
If one of them crashes, do they do the
Yeah,
same
like
thing?
what happens if Alex crashes again? Is Logan not going to race? Well, Logan's definitely getting the short end of the stick. And, you know, if they want to replace him, I think they should do it sooner rather than later. But it might be a wet race. Will we see wet tires? I feel like this just increases the chances for chaos.
Yeah, I don't know. So I thought that would be a possibility. Now it seems like they're saying that it would be clear for the weekend. It was really
Okay.
rainy when they first got there, like
Mhm.
yesterday, but now it's starting to clear up and it's looking like it won't rain this weekend. So we'll see. That would have been really interesting. Before we pivot directly into talking about the Japanese Grand Prix, definitely want to do that. Do you want to pivot back to news just to close the loop on the McLaren news that's been
Yes.
circulating?
So go ahead, take over. McLaren makes some changes.
Yes, so McLaren is making changes yet again in that David Sanchez, who joined the team in January, only been there for 3 months, is leaving. And so the news around this has been pretty straightforward. I think they've been pretty kind of transparent from what we can tell. In the
Definitely.
press release, they've been very like specific on the reason. So it seems like it's a mutual agreement in that when David Sanchez signed with McLaren last year,
And
I
just
forget what
gonna
his name
interrupt
was.
you, but David
Yeah.
came from Ferrari.
Yes,
He's
he
an
was at Ferrari for
ex-Ferrari.
like 10 years.
Yeah.
He's a really high level hire. It was
Seems
kind of a
like
big deal when McLaren
seems
got
like
him.
good spying to me.
That's what you were saying. But it seems like we can speculate and stuff, but from what they're telling us, it feels this is what I think happened is that when David Sanchez agreed to come to McLaren from Ferrari, where he was at for like 10 years, he was a pretty high level engineer. James Key was still the technical director at McLaren. So this was before McLaren made all those changes they made last year from taking the technical director position and breaking it out into 3 pieces so that there was an aerodynamics, a performance, and I forget what the other one is, but they broke out like the technical director thing into 3 pieces. And so some people are saying that maybe he wanted to leave because, you know, he is a pretty high level hire, and what he was hired to do, like the job description he agreed to, was not the job that he was going to have at McLaren after they made those changes, and that maybe he was doing less than, you know, what he kind of agreed to. So from the press releases and stuff, it seems mutual. It seems like there was a mutual understanding that there was a mismatch between all of the experience and technical expertise that David Sanchez has and, you know, what McLaren currently wants for that role. And this happened because after David Sanchez signed last year with McLaren, he had to take 9 months of what they call gardening leave, which I always think is such a funny term, but it's essentially like they have to take a certain time off so that they don't bring in any like of the
info,
you know, secrets from like Ferrari to McLaren. So he has to be out of the team for a certain number of months before he can join the next team. And so he joined formally in January of this year and is now leaving. So it seems like like an amicable departure. But I don't know what this
Yeah.
means for McLaren.
I
Like,
believe
he
Andrea's
wasn't,
he's gonna take over the role for the time being.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
the same role that Andrea Stella was playing while David Sanchez was on gardening leave and not able to join McLaren. Like, that's what he was doing. So he's just going back to what he was doing for the past several months. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it went poorly. Like, the car looks good. Like, all those developments that happened last year happened without David Sanchez. So it's, obviously he was only there for 3 months. He didn't have like a huge impact on the team's performance yet. So it's probably fine for McLaren, but maybe it just points to the fact that they haven't like found the right fit for the role that they're looking for. It is a weird split. Not many other teams do that. So
Yeah.
maybe they're just finding a hard time finding the right person for that position.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, McLaren does have a special livery for this weekend, which I always think is super exciting. And I feel like it's a little good luck charm for them. They do pretty well with special liveries. So I'm hoping to see a podium finish for McLaren.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lando has a cool Tokyo Drift style
helmet. Yes, lots of merch. The drivers have come up with a lot of their own little merch, lots of special things for this race weekend. Pierre has a merch line called A Kid with Big Dreams. It's actually
Is
really
that about
cute.
himself?
Yeah, it's about himself. It's not Alpine merch. It's actually Pierre merch, and it's like a picture of him as a baby, and then the back, I think it's written in crayon, and he did a whole photo shoot in the middle of like I don't know what the area is called, but the big screen. So he just looks super tiny, and then it's just like him in the middle with flashing screens.
That's funny.
Yes, and then we need to talk about this, but it seems like Charles Leclerc is going to be opening an ice cream shop in Milan. And it's called Lec.
Wow.
Like, I don't know, like a play on lick, but we know Charles has wanted to have his own clothing merch line for quite some time now, which I think that it might be best he didn't get to do one, because I don't know if you saw, he was wearing baggy jeans that were ripped, but the rips were made in star shape. So he always has a very interesting pant choice. So I cannot imagine what his merch line would look like, but I think ice cream makes a lot more sense.
I mean, is it like it's gelato, I'm assuming?
I know. I would assume it's gelato too. But yeah, it's very cryptic. It says what ice what or something like that on his little promo. And for some while now, he has been teasing. I remember he posted a picture in the snow eating ice cream, and the song was like Ice Ice Baby. So I guess we will stay tuned, but I'm definitely going to this ice cream shop if it's a real thing.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's plan a trip.
We're planning all the trips. Okay, what else? Gunther has an IG account. I just followed it.
Did he not previously have one? Or
no, I don't think so.
He previously didn't have social media presence?
No, he didn't.
That's
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Hi guys, it's Gunther Steiner here, the real Gunther Steiner. Remember, accept no substitutes. And then, he just keeps on. It's kind of lengthy, so I won't read it. But it's called Life of Steiner.
No.
So I can't wait to see. He's definitely like harnessing his social media presence. He's actually the ambassador for the Miami GP.
Yeah, I heard that. And he has a lot of broadcasting deals. So he did the Australian broadcast last time, and I think he has a few others set up, and he's been doing a bunch of stuff with like German broadcasting. So
Life
he's a busy man.
Principle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What else are we talking about?
Should we get into Japan?
Yeah, let's get into Japan. So this is, I didn't know, but this is the only figure 8 track on the whole calendar.
And for those
of you who don't know what that means, it just means the track is kind of shaped like a figure 8. So at one point it overlaps.
That's cool. Yeah. This is the first time that we're going to have a Japanese Grand Prix in the spring. And so, it's going to be a lot colder in Suzuka than we're used to. And some people are saying, what does this mean for Mercedes, for example? They've been having a lot of issues with cooling. They, like a lot of people from Mercedes have said that they don't understand what the car is doing when it's hot. So maybe they'll understand what the car is doing when it's cold, when they don't have to deal with the cooling system. It seems like they put too much energy into the cooling system, meaning that when the tires need to cool, when the car needs to cool down, a lot of energy goes there, which takes away energy from the power unit, making the car slower. So if it's a lot colder in Japan, maybe we'll see some Mercedes performance that we haven't seen yet. This track is also super interesting because it has all three types of corners, slow, medium, and high speed. And so it's kind of a tricky one, I've heard, to calibrate your car towards. Like, what do you prefer? Because all those corners kind of require different setups. And so teams have to make a decision on, like, are they going to prefer the higher speed corners? There's also like a hairpin and some chicane, so those are slower speed. So it kind of, teams might go different ways in terms of whether they go with like a higher or lower downforce setup. So that could be interesting. It's not going to rain, maybe, but if it did rain, that would also make it interesting. I think people are saying it's probably going to be, one DRS zone. People are saying it might be a one stop, but maybe a two stop. Unclear.
It was a three stop last year.
But is that because there was rain, or was it just because it was tire degradation?
I think it was tire degradation. Yeah.
And so we'll see what that is like. In higher temperatures, the tires tend to degrade faster. So if it's colder, is there going to be similar tire degradation? Is it mostly a temperature thing, or it might be a track thing, in which case we could see a two-stop race?
So I found these statistics from just Formula One, and they have a 67% chance of a safety car probability and a 50% chance of a virtual safety car. Interesting stats.
Maybe a little chaos, 50-50. Maybe it could go either way. Yeah, this is just such a fun track, and the Japanese fans are wild. Like, I don't know if you remember, like, you always see the pictures of people with little DRS hats.
Yes.
And like the little front wing hats and stuff, and like they all go crazy. So I think it'll be a really fun one.
I was watching the press conference, and Yuki says that the craziest gift he got was a mini him. And I think Carlos told him, "Are you sure you weren't just looking at yourself in the mirror?" Yeah, it was funny. Oh, which Carlos was also asked if he had been talking to teams, and he gave a very cheeky smile. And he said, yeah, talking to a few teams. Of course, I'm talking to them. So,
yeah. I mean, do we want to get into race predictions? Like, I'm curious as to what you think about Red Bull, given, the DNF from Max. Is that like a sign of things to come? Is that a one-time fluke?
I don't think it was a one-time fluke. I think that we're starting to see some weaknesses in their car. I'm not predicting Max to win this weekend. I actually think he might come P2. I think Carlos might win again. And selfishly, I'm going to put Lando on P3.
Love it. Love that. Yeah, no, I think this track is going to be so interesting. People say it's a really good barometer of the cars. So usually it's later on in the season, but this year they're calling it like an early season Barcelona. Those are two tracks, Suzuka and Barcelona, where you have all three types of corners. It's a really good barometer of like, it doesn't favor one car or another. You really get to see like how all the cars perform, because there's something that favors all the cars here. So I think it'll be really interesting. And I've heard that, with all the drama that's happening at Red Bull, right? One thing that people are saying is for the whole of Max Verstappen's career, the entire Red Bull team has built the car kind of in his favor. Like the whole, he's had both sides of the garage kind of on his side. And whenever there's been instances where the other side of the garage is trying to like equalize things, like Yas will step in, and then Adrian Newey will kind of back him up and make it so that, or Helmut Marko will step in so that Max gets favored. And so some people are speculating that maybe, Max isn't getting like the full treatment in terms of his car that he's used to this year because of the rift. And maybe that's why we're seeing a few more of those errors
Ah,
DNF.
your conspiracies.
My conspiracy.
That
So,
that makes a lot of
yeah.
sense. The car is not 100% suited to Max. Okay.
Yeah,
I
or
can get
maybe
behind
not even
that.
that it's not suited for him, but like they're not, doing the
Optimizing it.
full, optimizing, making sure everything's perfect, right? That
Mm-hmm.
they normally do. Because like, yeah, a max DNF is pretty rare. So yeah, we'll see if there's any trends in that. I still think that Max is gonna win Japan, even though I'd hope for a more interesting race. I think I'm predicting Max. I would I would also want to put Lando on the podium.
Okay.
So I would
And his
probably do,
helmet, new livery. Okay.
yeah, I think Max, yeah, let's do Max signs Lando.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Carlos is like he is on a good roll right now. I know he said he was on a roller coaster, but I think there's gonna be another high right now.
Yeah,
I'm getting nervous because I feel like it's gonna come down to Max and Carlos for the World's Drivers' Championship. And if Carlos would have gotten to race in Saudi Arabia, he could be leading right now.
really? Is that how the math works out? I haven't done the math.
Well, I'm girl mathing in my head. I'm Delulu girl mathing in my head. But I mean, a Max DNF, Carlos has won a race. Max has won two races, one race only. Max has only won a race or two.
Really?
I don't know. This is gonna be race 4. Carlos won one. Okay, so Max has probably won 2
Max
races.
won the
Then
other two, yeah.
yeah. Okay.
I was like,
So
who won the other
I
one?
mean, we could fact check, but we'll just do that after the next race to see where the standings are actually at.
Yeah,
I'm Delula
but
girl
yeah, we'll
mathing. That's
see.
a whole new
But
one.
you never know, like, what if the whole cooling thing checks out and Mercedes is up there? Like, I could see George maybe podiuming.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know,
Oh, Pierre Gasly says, I will quote him, that Alpine have taken the first steps in the right direction by bringing in planned updates to the car for the Japanese Grand Prix. So he seems to be happy with the update. I'm hoping they're beneficial and that they end up in the points because they've had a rough start to the season.
yeah, I mean, I'm not like, I'm not gonna hold my
You're
breath.
not impressed. Not impressed.
I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. How do you think Yuki and Daniel will shake up this race?
I think Yuki's gonna beat Daniel again. Like, I just don't have too much confidence in Daniel right now, and I think Yuki's gonna be extra motivated being in
Mm-hmm.
Japan,
Home race.
having the support of all the fans, the home race, and I mean, both Ayumu Iwasa and Yuki, like they've been at Suzuka for so many times. Like they both were in kind of junior series that took place. Like there's a Suzuka driver program too, so they've been there a lot. So I think that also is to his advantage.
It's
But
favorable. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think Yuki. Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen with Yuki. Like he's doing enough to at least be better than Daniel. I don't think that anyone's delusioned enough to think that he has a chance at a Red Bull seat in the future. But like, I don't think I don't think they're just gonna keep him at V Carb either because that team really has been like a development program, like an extension of the development program, essentially to get people ready for the Red Bull seat. So if there's no future for him in the Red Bull seat, I don't see them keeping him there for that much longer. So
Yeah.
even though he is doing well compared to Daniel this year, that's why I was thinking maybe
He's
Aston
ready
Martin
for
Honda
the next step.
connection. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't see him being in that car for that much
Yeah.
longer.
I can't see him racing with Lance. I can't see them as teammates. But maybe Lance won't even be there. So many unknowns.
Unknowns, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I'm super excited for this one. Hopefully we'll see some unexpected things. But I don't know. I sort of feel like Max is gonna come back from last week's DNF and just come back swinging, but we'll see.
We'll see. I wouldn't put it past him. Well, technically, the action starts tonight because there's FP1 around 10:30, I think. 10:30 Eastern time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anyone on the east coast of the US, this is not the race for us. It's going to be a
No,
bit of a challenge. I forget, is it like quali's at 1 a.m. or something?
we can check. I am actually on, oh, I have it right here. Yes, so quali is at 2 a.m. So Friday going into
Whew.
Saturday, and then the race is Saturday going into Sunday at 1 a.m. I am on European time. I'm going to bed at 8:30 p.m., waking up at 5:30, so I will most definitely not be up for the race. I will watch it bright and early on F1 TV.
I
Yeah.
will try and stay up for the race. I love
You'll
staying up
probably
for the
stay up for
races,
the race, right?
but I'll probably have to rewatch parts of it because what happened for Suzuka last year was like I stayed up and like I don't know, I watched the first half and then I realized that I fell asleep halfway through. Because
Yeah.
usually the late night ones too, like I'm drinking a little bit maybe, and so then I'm like really amped for the
Overly
start, and then I just,
excited.
woo.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if Max is leading. Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
well,
exciting, and then the Chinese Grand Prix is just around the corner, and then you're going to Miami, which is super
I
fun.
am going to
I'm so
Miami.
jealous.
You can still
And
come.
then
There's
yeah,
still
I don't
time.
think so, but maybe Silverstone.
Oh, are you going to the opening of the F1 arcade? It's
So I
April
haven't. So yes,
22nd.
F1 Arcade is opening in Boston. I'm super excited because I went to the one in London. It was a lot of fun. I tried booking. The booking site was like down, like it crashed. I think too many people were on it, and then I forgot to go back to it. So maybe I can't go that weekend because I'm going to be at a wedding, but I
Okay.
was going to try and go another time. But yeah, it's super exciting. The one in London was a blast, and it's really fun. That like I hope they do all the races and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it'll be fun.
That's so neat.
Maybe I'll watch the Miami Grand Prix from F1
From
Arcade.
there. Okay. Yeah, nice. It's a good time. Alrighty, well, that's all for this Japan preview. We will be back for a race recap. So do all the things. Rate our podcast if you're watching on YouTube. Follow, subscribe, leave a comment, and make sure to join us on Discord as well. Bye.
Which I'm now on Discord.
She is now on Discord. Yeah, we need to revive the Discord channel.